Welcome to the next session on Oracle Source with 12C. Today we'll discuss about one of the important topics on Oracle SOA, and it is called service orchestration. Okay. So let us see what is service orchestration. We'll understand the concept and we will do a simple example in Oracle Source with 12C, and then we will go through the slides of what it is. So before that, let me start JDeveloper. Before we talk about orchestration, we need to uh, talk about another service aggregation model called choreography. Okay, so basically there are two service aggregation models. One is choreography and the other one is orchestration. So basically both.
Ravi, have you started the presentation?
Yeah, I haven't shared it. Okay, now I've shared it. Yep. Fortunately, I haven't started writing anything, so we're good. Okay. So choreography and orchestration, I mean, both are basically service aggregation patterns, and I mean, both will deal with calling different services to achieve a specific business functionality. Okay. So in your in your enterprise, in any enterprise, there might be business processes which involve uh, calling different services in a particular order. Okay, so you might want to first call a particular service to get some details, and using those details you want to call another service, and then using those details you want to call another service, and based on the response you want to call one of the two. So a business process could be very complex, and it will involve multiple services or multiple service invocations, right? So in calling multiple services for achieving a business process, there are two patterns that you can follow. The first one is called choreography. Okay, so let me show you how a choreography is. Okay, a choreography, as the name implies, it's basically normally choreography, I mean when a performer performs his dance, I mean if we choreograph something, so it's basically one step after the other, right? So you have a sequence of steps which he will perform according to the music, and it gives you a good dance, right? So in the same way, choreography also, you will call different services in a particular order, one after the other, okay, to achieve a business functionality. So let's say I have multiple services. Okay, so I'm just representing each service with a circle here. Okay, so this service could be anything like calling a database or calling a mail service, or maybe doing some complex logic, whatever it is. Okay, so when you start your, let's say this is the start of your process. Okay, when you start it, you first call a service and you get the response of it, and based on the response you perform some logic, and then you call this second service. So you would be calling all the services in a particular order, one after the other, and you would do some business logic within in between calling the services. Okay, and finally you're done with your work. Okay, so this is nothing but choreography. So you would be doing service invocations in a particular order, one after the other. Okay, and if you observe, like every service here will know where the request has come from and where it will send its response to. Okay, so let's say if we number these services, 5, 6 and 7. Okay, so if you're talking about service 3, it clearly knows that service 2 is its service 2 is its caller, and after doing all the processing it will have to call service 4. Okay, so basically it knows where the request is coming and it knows where the request is going. Okay, so basically it's kind of a tight coupling, right? So I mean, when service 3 invokes service 4, what does it mean? Like, it has the details of service 4, right? So basically it is tightly bound. So suppose this service 4's functionality is kind of, let's say it is a it's a balance inquiry service. Okay, so let's say the company now has come up with a new logic for bank checking the balance, and instead of service 4 which was implemented in mainframe, maybe it has come up with a new service on Java. Okay, I'm just giving a vague example, but so in this case, like, since one of the services has changed, the whole link is broken, right? Now you'll have to touch the code on service 3 so that it calls service 4 instead of the old service 4, and then this link has to be established, right? So what does it mean? Like, every service is dependent on the other here, correct? If you're not making the changes on the other ones, like the whole service, whole link is broken and you wouldn't achieve your functionality, correct? So this is kind of a tight coupling nature. Okay, but still your business process is getting done. Okay, so with the choreography is a traditional approach of calling different services for a business process, but there are obvious difficulties in this. Like, the main difficulty is the tightly coupled nature, correct? And it doesn't give you options wherein one service, um, like the event process. Yesterday we were talking, right? Like asynchronous messaging in a JMS, like wherein I just publish a message and there would be n number of subscribers subscribing the message. So that type of loose coupling cannot be achieved with choreography. So there is another pattern for calling all the services in a particular order to achieve your functionality, and that is called orchestration. Okay, so what is orchestration? So you will still have all the 7 services. We'll take the same example. Okay, but instead of one service calling the other directly, what we would do is we would have a central controller. Okay, and all the routing logic will be defined in this central controller, and it will take care of calling each and every service. So first you call service 1, you get back the response, and then you process it, and then you call service 2, and then you get back the response, and service 3, and so on. Okay, so basically end of the day you will achieve the same thing in choreography as well as orchestration. But here in orchestration, the advantage is, see, all the services are existing within your enterprise and together they form a business functionality, but each service is unaware of the others. This service or service 1 wouldn't even know that there are 7 other services in the link. Okay, and it don't know whether it would be the first service or somewhere in the middle or at the end. Okay, all it does is basically give its functionality, that's all. It doesn't have to take care of calling the other ones. Okay, it doesn't have to take care of mapping, and if something changes on the other service, uh, it doesn't have to take care, because every service is independent of each other. If something changes on the implementation of the service, the only place where it changes is in this controller. Okay, whatever this box represents. So this kind of interaction is called service orchestration, and the advantage of this is clearly shown here, wherein it is very loosely coupled. So your services don't have to be changed whenever there is some change in the other service. That's very important, right? There may be 100 services talking to a particular service, and let's say if that service changes, then don't you you won't have to change all the 100 consumers, right? So that is the advantage of having orchestration. So clearly orchestration is a much better approach in sequencing your services in a particular order, because you have more control on it, right? And suppose if I want to change the order from say 1 2 3 to say 1 3 4, the only place you will change is in the logic here, right? Whereas here, instead of connecting service 1 to service 2, I'll have to change the code to connect to service 3, and then it messes up, right? So those are the different advantages that you have with orchestration, and hence orchestration would be a better approach for composing your services. Okay, so if we look at the definition, orchestration is basically defined as a coordination and arrangement of multiple services exposed as a single aggregated service. Okay, we'll look at the definitions and all tomorrow, or not tomorrow, in the next session. But if I just want to write the definition here, I mean, this tells you everything. It is defined as the coordination and arrangement of multiple services as a single aggregated service. Okay, so what is the end result you are getting? The end result you are getting is a single aggregated service which does your business functionality. So my start to finish here is a service, okay, and the whole service will be exposed as a single service. Okay, though you're calling different services here, your whole functionality will be exposed as a single service. Okay, and all the consumers, whoever wants this business functionality, will just call this guy and you get the response back. I mean, the consumers of this business functionality don't have to bother about what's happening inside. Okay, so that's the reason it says defined as a coordination and arrangement of multiple services. We're doing coordination and arrangement, okay, and you will expose it as a single aggregated service. And this is what, this is what business process execution language does. Or in other words, you achieve orchestration, or I would say orchestration in Oracle SOA, or I would say in SOA in general, is achieved through business process execution language. Okay, so business process execution language is one of the major components in SOA, because it does the whole business uh, orchestration. Okay, a business process means it's a complex connections of different services, right? So it is a heart and soul of any SOA product. Okay, so even in your projects, BPEL would be the major component. Okay, everything would happen in BPEL. So whatever examples we did till now, like the database adapter or JMS or mediators, all those will be part of your BPEL process. Nowhere you will have a adapter, or nowhere you will have a service which just talks to one database. Okay, you will have a service which talks to like different databases and gives you a result. So all those things that we have learned earlier would be implemented, I mean, would be part of your BPEL process. Okay, they won't be in silos, they would be part of your BPEL process. Okay, so let me open this JDeveloper. So when you look at BPEL full form is business process execution language. Okay, so the name itself tells you it is basically a language for executing your business process. Okay, business process is any functionality, like uh, let's say a withdrawal. Okay, amount withdrawal is a business functionality, and it involves different services, right? First of all, you need to fetch the account details, that's one service, and then you need to check the balance, that's one service, and then whatever amount he gives, you need to deduct the amount, and then you have to update the account. So there are different services involved. So basically a business process is something uh, that gives a meaning to the business. So you will I mean, BPEL is a language for executing such business processes. Okay, so let me close it. Let me show you a sample. Okay, I don't have it in this system, but I'll show you a real-time project. I mean, I'll just show you a snapshot of how a BPEL process would look like, but it is not there in this project. I'll show it next day. Okay, but let us open some sample composite and see what is BPEL. Okay, so as the name implies, it is a language, and when you say it is a programming language, that means it offers all the capabilities that any programming language offers. Like it has variables like local and global. Okay, it has loops, and then what do you say? It has scopes. Okay, and then it has exception handling. It has Boolean conditions like if, else, or any conditions, and you can do whatever processing. So basically whatever any programming language does, BPEL will do it for you. Okay, but one advantage of doing of working with this language in Oracle Source Suite is you never write a code. It's all drag and drop. Okay, so till now, even if you observe, like any project you take, okay, so the only thing that we are really doing is defining the schema, right? And then defining the schema, literally all the visitors, see, we never created a visitor, but they are created for you. And similarly, we never created a JCF file. So in SOA, like you won't do anything handwritten, like everything would be automatically created for you. Okay, so even BPEL also same thing. Like you don't have to handwrite the code. Everything would be written by the uh, tool. Okay, but what I would say is, I mean, though your tool assists you in doing things, at least uh, for BPEL, maybe you just look at the XML code generated and get familiarized with the XML tags which are used in BPEL. Okay, you just drag and drop. You never write your code, but I would suggest you to go through the XML also. Even the book that I would suggest you, it basically goes through each and every XML tag that is created underneath. Okay, for file adapter or DB adapter, and you don't have to go through because it's not really important, but for BPEL, it's kind of important. Okay, so it would be helpful in your interviews also. Okay, so let us start understanding BPEL by doing an example. That's the best way of understanding instead of explanations. So let me create a sample project. I would say, so project, and say hello world BPEL. We'll do a very simple example today, but we will try to learn different things with this example. But on the next session, we would do a real full-fledged BPEL sample wherein we would be calling 4 different services one after the other, and then we do all the complex logic there. Okay, I would say hello world BPEL and then empty composite. You might be wondering like what are these? So basically instead of empty composite and dragging and dropping a mediator, it will directly give you a mediator option. But I would always prefer using an empty composite because you'll have more control. Okay, so just like any other service, even in BPEL, I mean even the first thing that we need to do is creating the schemas. Okay, so we'll do a very simple example here. So all that we will do here would be like it's a hello world example, right? So I'll just give in first name, last name, and say salary. Okay, so this will be my input, and my output would be say full name and bonus. Okay, so in the first half of the example, like in the first section, let us concentrate only on first name and last name. Okay, we will extend the same example and then we will do the salary, but let's define the schema, but we will be concentrating only on first name and last name. So let me create a schema. We can actually do it in the shared schema, but this is a simple one, right? So let me do it here. But for you, you do it in MDS till you get completely familiar with MDS. In the interest of time, I'm not doing it in MDS. XML schema, and I would say schema. Okay, and I would give any name. You can give any name, it doesn't matter. Actually, let's check if our MDS already has this kind of schema. No. Put it in. Actually, I want to get rid of all these. Let's get rid of the unused ones. Okay, so we don't have any readily available in MDS. Maybe we'll create our own schema. First new. Oh, I'm sorry. Similarly, maybe I will say greeting message. Oh, no space. Okay. Or I would say gross. Okay, so I just defined a very simple schema. Just a moment. And go to your SOA composite. Okay. Now, so how would your BPEL look like? Maybe if I may draw a diagram, so your BPEL would be in your composite, okay? And let's say your BPEL is calling different services. So all the calls would be within your BPEL process. And if you look at the definition, what does it say? It says defined as coordination and arrangement of multiple services as a single aggregated service, right? So basically all this complex logic that you're doing within BPEL, it will be exposed as a single service. So just like in any other service that we have done till now, the whole BPEL will be exposed through a simple web service, a SOAP web service. Okay, so let's do it. In this case, it's a very simple concatenation, but we will understand the concept behind it. Okay, so let me drag and drop. There is a BPEL process here, so I'll just drag and drop into the component section. Okay, give a name. BPEL 2.0 is the latest specification, and that is a default in 12c. You can go with it. Okay, basically these are like two different versions, just like there are two different versions of SQL or Java, etc. I would say give a name, hello world, BPEL process. Okay, and you give a namespace. Okay, namespace at this point you wouldn't, I mean, it doesn't make much sense for you. Namespace is basically a unique name. Let's say there are two, there is, say, there is a field called name in product schema, and there is a field called name in account schema. So name in account, name with respect to account is account name, right? Name in respect to product is product name. Okay, but since the product schema has a field called name and account schema has this field called name. Okay, actually they both are different, but since the names are same, there should be a unique identifier, right? So that identifier is nothing but the namespace. So namespace in combination with your field name will give you the unique meaning of a particular field. Okay, so my account schema would have a different namespace and my product schema would have a different namespace. So though the field name is same, the actual meaning differs. Okay, so more about the namespace you can check in its XML concept. You can check in w3schools.com. But at this point it shouldn't make much sense for you, so leave it as it is. And what is the directory? Okay, your source directory. And here, what type of service you want, asynchronous, synchronous, or a one-way. Okay, so I would say asynchronous BPEL process for now because we wanted a response immediately. And okay, so this one exposes a SOAP services there, right? Now when I check this, automatically, anyways I'm creating BPEL process for this, but when I check this option, automatically a SOAP web service will be created for me and the link will automatically appear. Okay, so I don't have to drag and drop the SOAP web service again, give the input output and then wire it. Okay, so it is just a simple option to minimize your work, that's all. So you need not check it, or you can check it, it doesn't matter. Okay, what should be the name? Maybe you would have to give a proper name. For now you just leave it. What is the input? Your input is, I'm sorry, it is in the project schema files only, right? So select your input and similarly select your output. Oh, I name it properly, but doesn't matter. Okay, and when you say okay, so you get a BPEL process and you get a expose service also. Earlier what are we doing, like we have just created a mediator and then we created a SOAP service and then we wired it, right? So if you don't check that option, you have to do the same thing, drag and drop, give the inputs outputs, okay, and then wire them. Okay, so you know what is this? This is nothing but it is basically exposing whatever is inside this. Okay, in your components and reference, the whole bunch is being exposed by your SOAP web service. So all the external consumers, or when we do test from EM, everything, we hit this particular service and this will propagate the response, propagate the request and send back the response. Okay, so coming back, let's see what is inside BPEL. I told you it is a language, right? So it does out and out everything. So let's see how it is implemented. So when I double click on this, this is what I have. This is the basic skeleton of a BPEL process. Okay, so just like any flow diagram has a start and end activities, a BPEL process would have a start and an end. Okay, so in this case, your start is a receive activity. Okay, and in all BPEL cases, your start would be a receive activity. Receive is basically you are receiving a request. Okay, so in this case, what is the request that you are receiving? So whatever I'm sending through the web service, it is getting the request, right? So the same thing here. So a receive activity would receive your request. You can see the arrow also coming from the client. Okay, and if you double click on the receive, what you observe, the main thing, for now, the main thing that you need to observe is the operation name. Okay, by default it would be process, but the major thing that you need to uh, observe is this one, variable. Okay, so by default it created an input variable, a variable of name input variable, and its type is same as the input type of your BPEL process. Okay, this is the first activity, right? So what it would receive, it would receive the request, and the request is of a request type that we have defined in the schema. Okay, so your entire request would be available in this variable. Okay, So you will traverse through this variable to get the details of your request. Okay, fine. And what is the other thing that we have? The other thing that we have is reply. Okay, so these are just names. You can just give whatever name you want, but receive input and reply output would be more readable, right? If you have gone from the company, a new person, when he comes in, this is more readable for him. Okay, so always give appropriate names. So reply output, what is it doing? If you look at the arrow, it is basically sending out the message. Okay, and your reply would be your last activity in your BPEL process. So basically it will be replying back the response. Okay, and if I double click on this, the important thing that you need to observe here is the output variable. Okay, so basically what this reply is doing is it is sending back the output variable. Okay, and this output variable type is your BPEL process response type. Okay, so what's happening, like you receive the input variable here and you send back the output variable here. So what all business logic that you want to do, you have to do it within your receive and reply. Okay, it could be as simple as concatenating your first name and last name, or it could be as complex as calling 1,000 services in an order parallelly, sequentially, whatever it is. You always have to do within your request and reply. Okay, so your response may not be reply always. It depends on the interaction pattern. We'll go through that at the end of the session, but your start will always be a receive. Okay, so we have understood the most basics of our BPEL. So the skeleton of your BPEL process looks like this. Okay, and when you talk about BPEL, the whole thing that you're doing is basically operating on your variables. Okay, so even in any swap process we have done till now, it is all about messages, right? You define an input message and then you do all the transformations. You get the output message. Whether you read it from the DB or JMS or file or AQ, it doesn't matter. It's all manipulating the messages. So even BPEL is also same. So in our case, what was the uh, scenario? It's basically you get first name, last name, and then you want to concatenate it to full name, right? And we will see the look at the salary part later. But first of all, let's concentrate on first name, last name, and full. Okay. So in this input variable, I have my first name, last name, and salary, right? So I want to basically extract that first name, last name from the input variable and stuff it to the full name of the output variable. Correct? So how do I do? So all these assignments, so what am I doing? Basically here, I will concatenate A plus B and then I will assign it to C. So I'm concatenating first name, last name, assigning it to full name. So if you look at the component palette, there is something called assign. Okay, so just drag and drop. Where would you drag and drop? Before the receive doesn't make sense, because the moment you receive the phone call, only then you will be able to talk, right? Not before the phone call. Okay, after you hang up, there is nothing to do. It doesn't make sense. So anything you want to do, you have to do it within these two. Okay, so I'll drag and drop an assign activity, and remember you should give proper names, because your BPEL process would contain, I mean, even a very basic BPEL process would contain at least 10 different activities. So give a proper name. Okay, I would say assign full name. Okay, and every project would have its own convention. Some projects would say for everything you have to prefix with, I mean, all assign activities prefix with assign underscore. Okay, all invoke activities prefix with invoke underscore. So there are certain rules that will be defined within your project, but I would basically give, I mean, I would start with the activity name and then what it is doing. Okay, so I just dragged and dropped. Okay, but I didn't do anything, so double click on that. Okay, in this what I want to do, I basically want to concatenate my first last name, right? So we know that the receive input has input variable which contains your request. So just open it you have this first name, last name, right? And so those two you want to concatenate to your output variable. Okay, so request will be on the left. I mean, you have all the variables on the left, all the variables on the right. Okay, but for simplicity, you open your target on the right side so that readability is good. Okay, so in my case, what I want to do, I want to concatenate these two, right? So if I just want to assign, I can do it like this, just like in transformation. Okay, but I want to concatenate, meaning I want to create a function. So how you do is just right click on the target and say expression. Okay, so it will create me, it will open a new editor, but it will give me all the functions that you see in your transformation. Okay, so in this case I want to concatenate, so I'll click on that and say insert expression, or I can just write it doesn't matter. Okay, and then the its format is, so it will give you the signature. So it is basically concat of string 1, string 2, string 3 and so on. Okay, so in my case what I want to do, I want to basically do this, right? First name comma a space comma and then last name, correct? So let's do that. So my first name, last name is in the input variable. Okay, I would say first name and then maybe I'll give a space. Okay, even space should be in quotes, and then last name. You can double click on this or you can click on the insert expression, doesn't matter. Okay, so what am I doing? I'm basically concatenating it and then it comes to the output. Okay, so if you observe, so I right clicked on this, right? So this will be the target. My source is concatenation. Okay. And then okay, so do I have to do anything extra? Like I have assigned my input to output, or basically first name last name to the message. Oh, it's a greeting message, right? So let us do a little more. Maybe I would say hello space comma hello first name last name. Okay, so I have assigned my inputs to outputs, like, or I would say my source to target. Okay, I am done. Should I do anything? No, you don't have to, because already your reply output is sending back, right? The only duty of yours is to stub this output variable. So that I have already done here. So I'm good. Let me deploy the process. So any questions still here? This is the most basic example. We will do all the complicated examples within BPEL because this is the most important one. But till now, you have any questions? Okay, deployment finished. Let me open my enterprise manager. Okay, while it is opening up, see, at the start of the session, I told you, right? Like all these days, we were not looking at the source files, but BPEL is one file which you want to look at the source. Okay, so all this is nothing but programming that we are doing because it is a language. But if you look at the source, okay, let's click on assign and see what is the assigns related code. Okay, so if you see here, this is the assign related code. What am I doing? It's very simple. Assign in assign activity. This is the name, and what am I doing? I'm basically copying from these variables to this variable. So as simple as that. So even your language, if you observe, it is nothing but XML. You're not handwriting anything. But as far as BPEL is concerned, I would really suggest you to look at the source code. Okay. So even the book that I give you, it will all talk about the source code. That is the reason why I like that book very much. So you will understand BPEL to its core, which is very important. I mean, that makes you unique to other people. Okay, so the deployment is finished. Let me check my enterprise manager. Okay, so this wouldn't make much sense. Ravi, Kiran, I mean, it's not really important what it is, but okay. So my greeting message is hello, Ravi, Kiran, which is nice. I mean, since we didn't assign anything to the gross salary, it hasn't come. But if I look at the launch flow trace, so it will tell you what happened. Okay, so you might want to click on the flow here. Okay, because you get a very neat representation. So what happened initially? You received input. Okay, and the input variable name is input variable. You can actually give a different name to this also. It doesn't matter. But readability wise, input variable is good, right? So this is my input. Okay, and after that, what happened? It went to the assign activity. What happened in the assign activity? It basically concatenated. Okay, and then what happened? First, it replied back this variable. Okay, since it is so small, like you have only 3 activities, but this is how a BPEL process would look like. Okay, so let us enhance this process a little more so that you will understand it in a little better way. Okay, so we already have salary in this. Okay, what we will do is, since I told you that BPEL is a language, it can do anything any programming language does. So let's see if it does some logic for me. So I would like to create a very simple logic. I would say if the salary is greater than 10k, maybe I'll give bonus as 10%. Okay, and if salary is less than 10k, I would give bonus as say 12%. Okay, so my gross would be 112% here and 110%. So the logic is simple. Let's see how we implement it. Okay, so let's try to understand what we should do. Okay, so we have the salary in this input variable. Okay, we are good. We have the source. Now what we should do in the assign activity, basically for this one I need to write a if else condition, right? So it is a assign. Assign is like a what do I say? Like a shorter version of your transformation. Okay, so in transformation we have defined if else, right, conditions, but in assign directly you will not be able to do that so easily. If it were a transformation, I would have written it here only, but since it is assign, I will not be able to do it. So I will be doing it after the assign. Okay, so you can do it before assign or after assign. It shouldn't matter because you're working on different variables. Okay, so I mean, if I want to enlarge this one, so this should look something like this. So after the assign, my flow has to have an if condition, correct? So if the salary is less than 10k and if the salary is greater than 10k, so what I need to do, like my gross is equal to 110% and my gross is equal to 112% or 110 and 112, whatever it is, percent of my input salary, here also salary, correct? And then after that I want to hand over the control back to my process. Okay, so let's do this. We'll see how to do. So you look at all the BPEL constructs here and you'll find something called if. So most of the components would be uh, almost similar to your regular programming language, like if, for each, flow, like those would be in most of the programming languages, right? So I would drag and drop and if condition here. By default it gives you 2. You can always have, you may have 10 conditions, right? So I would, I mean, whatever you want, you can actually do it. In this case, I just need only 2, right? So give it a proper name. I would say bonus check, because your BPEL would look like a flow diagram, okay? And in your flow diagram has to be very much readable, right? So if, what is the label? I would say salary less than 10k, okay? And basically I'm defining variable salary greater than 10k. Okay, these are the labels. Labels are just for readability, nothing else. It doesn't give you any functionality. Okay, so how do I define my if condition? Just double click on your if. Here is a condition. Okay, so what is the condition? Click on this calculator icon, this which is nothing but the expression builder. Okay, the condition is basically salary less than 10,000, correct? Okay, and then else is obviously greater than 10,000 or greater than equal to. Okay, maybe I want to label it differently. I would say greater than or equal to. So if my salary is less than 10,000, which I've already defined, what should I do? I want my gross, so here it is, instead of bonus it's gross, right? I want my gross is equal to 112% of salary, right? Where is salary? Salary is in the input. So basically what am I doing? I'm doing an assignment. Okay, so just drag and drop an assign activity here. Okay, give it a proper name. I would say assign salary, or actually it is assign bonus, and how much it is? It is 112% of input, right? So right click on this expression. So it is mathematical functions, and what is it? 112%, right? So 1.12 multiplied by, so you can actually, so multiply is nothing but a star icon, as simple as that, of your salary. Okay, that's all. I'm done. If it is greater than 10,000, again an assign activity. I would say assign salary. I need not say assign salary for greater than 10k because already the label is here, right? So it would make sense. And then what is my gross? You can actually drag and drop this one, or right click and say expression builder. Doesn't matter. Both are same. So I would say 1.1 into salary. Okay. So that's all. See, what did I do? What did I do? Like if salary, basically I defined an if-else condition, just like any other programming language. Okay, so if I want to check the XML tags that are beneath, so it is this one. Okay, so what does it do apart from the documentation? So what is it doing? If your condition is less than 10,000, you copy from 2. Similarly, in the else, you do an assign where you are copying 1.1 into salary into your gross. Okay, I'm done. So the salary part is handled by this, your greeting message is handled by this. That's all, we are done. So let us redeploy it. Okay, maybe I'll deploy it as 1.1 just for a change. Just a moment. Okay, since I have excuse me, defined it as double, it has given me the full string, but you can actually trim it. Okay, so there are functions to trim it, so you can use those in the assign activity to do it, but maybe you can explore that as an assignment. Okay, so this is the launch flow trace. If you see, I received this input and then first assignment took place where full name is assigned. Okay, see, everything is happening in silos. So here I'm more concentrating on the full name, and in the next assignment I'm concentrating on gross salary. So in my gross salary, it went to bonus check if condition, wherein else is selected because it is greater than 10,000, and it went to the gross salary. See, this one is assigned earlier only, right? So it basically appends to your previous message. And here we are assigning gross salary, and finally it came out. Okay, so as simple as this. Any questions till now? So your BPEL process, irrespective of its complexity, would be exactly the same. Okay, so it would be nothing but a flow diagram in which you're programming your logic. Okay, and I encourage you to go to the source. Any questions till now? Okay, is there any expression shape in BPEL so that I can write some Java code? Of course there is. So actually these are nothing but BPEL constructs. Okay, so I mean the standard Oracle, the standard SOA specification doesn't give you, but as I told you, Oracle gives its own extensions, right? One of such extension is Java embedding activity. So it would be somewhere here, Java embedding. So you just drag and drop and do whatever you want here. Okay, so as simple as that. And Java embedding is one of the frequently used things, and it is highly encouraged not to use Java because SOA should be technology agnostic. But whatever projects have done till now, there is a Java code involved. Okay, because I mean there are some complex logics which would take time if you do with the default given constructs. So in such cases, like in the interest of performance, you would use Java embedding. Okay, so that is about BPEL. Okay, we have done a very simple example. Next session we would do a much complicated example wherein we will call maybe a couple of DB adapters, one externally hosted web service. We'll do a real orchestration. You will have a feel of SOA, or rather you will have a feel of BPEL. And we will use the same example and go on extending it maybe for the next 3 or 4 sessions. Okay, not this one, but the one that we'll be doing next. Okay, so if you are good with this, maybe I want to take another 5 minutes of your time and explain the different interaction patterns.
Ravi, in Oracle extensions, do they have only the Java thing or have any other thing?
Sorry?
No, in the Oracle extensions, you said we can do that Java embedded thing, right?
Oh, yeah, it's only Java. They have given extension only to Java. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So in theory, I can write Java code to exotic a value from message and then don't need people. Okay. No, this is just a hello world, right? Hello world example. So it is simple. That's all. Like, yep. I mean, hello world in a Java program, like in essence, you can write a string. So just to learn how a BPEL would be, I gave you this example. But when you do the next example, you will know the real usage of it. Okay?
Yeah, so Ravi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so what I mean is I don't really need those shapes. So I just put a expression shape in there. So I can code the if condition in there, and I don't need all the shapes, right? So all I need is just a programming block.
That is correct. I mean, for this simple logic, you can definitely write expression to do it, but your expressions are not readable because, see, first of all, SOA doesn't encourage you to do Java embedding, but you can still do it. Oracle gives it for you. But if you do all the code inside your Java embedding, okay, one thing is it is not readable. Okay, so if I look at this one, it looks like a flow diagram, right? So it is very much readable for me and it is easy to maintain also. Whereas if you do everything in Java, like every SOA person need not know Java, right? There are SQL, even in our batch itself, there are people who doesn't know Java. Okay, so they cannot do it, number one. So it becomes technology specific. Second thing is it wouldn't be readable. I mean, this is a simple logic, so maybe you can do it in Java. But if it is complex, if you write everything in Java embedding, like you don't know what's happening, right? So in your flow trace, if you want to debug it, like you just see Java embedding, that's all, and you see the error. Whereas if you do this, if you are doing the real BPEL, you will know exactly where it has gone wrong. And your real BPEL wouldn't be so simple, it would be very complex. Maybe next, yeah, this is a different machine. So what I'll do is I'll load my real project example, real project here, and I will just show you a glance of how a real BPEL would look like. Then you might understand, like, okay, I mean, if I do it in Java, yes, you can do anything in Java, right? Then we are coming to SOA because of certain things. So that is the reason why we cannot do it. But that's a genuine doubt. We can do everything in Java. I mean, we can do the embedded activities. Okay. So instead of this assignment, okay, so we have just for assigning full name and if condition on the salary, like we have this one, right? Because we don't have a if construct in assign. So instead of these two, like just like Tommy said, why can't I do an if condition in Java? So instead of the whole thing, I can actually do it with a simple transformation file. Okay. So this transformation, what is my input? Is my input. Okay. And then what is my output? Target variable is my output. And then maybe I would say it as a S sign or transform standard syntax is T. I would say transform underscore full payload. Okay. And then here I can do whatever I want. So I want to concatenate. So basically you're doing the same thing here. Okay, and maybe if condition, you know how to write if condition, right? So Excel if it should. Okay. If my salary less than 10,000, okay, my gross salary, oh, it is LT, I'm sorry. Star 1.1, okay. And similarly, you can have another if condition like the one we have done. So with a simple transformation, we can do it, but transformation would be little more readable than a Java code. Okay, for transformations, like your regular transformations would be a little complex. So we would do instead of assign, we would do it in a transform activity. Okay, because it is a little more readable, because your schemas would have like thousands of variables. You won't believe, but you would have like literally hundreds of fields on the left and hundreds of fields on the right. Okay, so transform would be more readable than assign activity. So like whatever you wanted to put in a Java, you can actually do it in transform also. Okay, so it's your wish, like how you want to do it, because all are very lightweight components. Okay, in fact transformation is like it should call another engine to do it. So transformation is little more heavyweight compared to directly using the embedded activities, but really not like it doesn't hinder your performance. So that is about the basic BPEL. Okay, and I want to tell you about the interaction patterns. So earlier we have seen there are three kinds of, or basically two kinds of interactions. One is synchronous. It is start the recording. Yes. Okay. One is synchronous pattern. Okay. What is a synchronous pattern? So in real world example, a synchronous pattern would be like a phone call. Okay. So first of all, you place a phone call. okay, and the other person would receive it, and then he would reply back immediately, right? So basically you wait till he responds back. So that's a synchronous pattern, okay? And the equivalent BPEL process would look something like this, wherein you would have a receive activity first, okay, and you do all the work that you want in between, and finally you would have a reply activity back. So basically you're replying back, right? Okay, so you reply back to the caller, you get the request from this one. And the next pattern, this is what we have seen just now, receive and reply back, okay? You can check the arrows also, arrow directions. And the second pattern is asynchronous. Asynchronous, and let's say two-way. Okay, two-way means you are getting the response back. So asynchronous two-way, in real world, maybe the analogy would be something like this. You post a letter to your friend, okay, you mail a letter to your friend, and then which would take 2 or 3 days to receive, to for the letter to go, okay? But during this time you won't stop and you won't wait for your friend to reply back, right? You would continue with your regular stuff, okay? So your friend on the other hand will receive it after some time, okay, after a few days or hours or whatever it is, okay? He reads the letter, and if if he wants to write back, what he does the same work that you have done here, wherein he will basically, this guy will basically write the letter and send you back explicitly, right? So here in the phone, he's not, you are dialing the number, okay? This guy just receives the phone and talks, correct? He's not dialing again. But whereas here, you're posting the letter here, and whenever this guy receives, he will post it back, correct? Assuming it's a two-way, meaning you need a response, so this guy posts back, okay? So whatever you're doing here, this guy would do here, okay? And then you would receive it, and till the time you receive, it's not that you don't do anything, you do with your regular stuff, and then when you receive it, you use the response, and then if you want to use it, you can do, okay? This guy also same, the moment he sends the request, sends a letter to you, he continues with your work, right? So this is a real world analogy of asynchronous, okay? So you're not waiting for the response, rather you will do your stuff, but whenever you get a response, you receive it, okay? So it's not that you get a response later and I reject, you have to receive the response because you need the response. So how asynchronous two-way BPEL would look like? So I would model you using two BPEL processes, two separate BPEL processes, okay? So any BPEL process, first activity is receive, that is for sure, okay? So because, okay, it would be receive, okay? And then posting the letter means basically you're doing some work, okay? So in the SOA terms, basically you're invoking a service, right? So you're calling a service. So basically you're calling a service which would be received on the other service using a receive, okay? Because that is where your work starts on the second person, right? Your friend receives the letter, and that is when he writes back the letter, correct? So you would use an invoke activity to invoke a service, okay, and the other guy receives it, and you would continue doing your work, okay, like whatever you want to do, like you want to talk to a database, meanwhile you want to talk to a JMS, whatever you want to do, you do it, okay? And when the time has come to wait for the response, you will wait here, okay? And then the second BPEL process, who is the second guy here, he does all their work, and whenever he is done with your request, let's say this is get balance, okay? So he talks to different databases and finally gets a balance, consolidates the message, and then he has to write back the letter for you, right? Meaning he has to do the same work that you have done earlier. What have you done earlier? You have invoked it. So even here, instead of replying back, he will invoke you. Okay, so you will, or the second BPEL process in an asynchronous activity will explicitly invoke by sending the response. Okay, and then you would receive it using a receive activity. And after you receive, you do all your regular stuff, and finally you will reply back. I mean, you cannot reply because if it is asynchronous, even this would be asynchronous, it would be an invoke activity, so that you send back the response to the caller. Okay, so this is a typical asynchronous BPEL process. Okay, so I have given you two BPEL processes just to give the analogy, but if you look at a single BPEL process here, the first, your BPEL process starts with a receive activity and it ends with an invoke activity. Okay, so in asynchronous service, it is your duty to write back, correct? So it is your duty to invoke explicitly, whereas here it is just a reply. Okay, whereas here it is an invoke. Okay, so apart from the activities, basically activity represents some code within it, right? So here it invokes, meaning calls a service. Here it just replies back to the same service. But in both the cases, you will be dealing with the variables only. So you receive a variable, you do all the stuff, you send a variable, this guy does all the stuff with the variable, sends back, and then you manipulate the variable, send back the variable. So it is all about manipulating your variable within your BPEL process. Okay, so this is how asynchronous two-way would look like. Asynchronous one-way is damn simple. You receive a message using the receive activity, then do your stuff, and then that's all, exit, because you're not sending back anything. Okay, so the first activity either in asynchronous or synchronous is always receive. Okay, so if you look at the component palette, it is always receive. Okay, whereas the final activity in asynchronous would be reply back, but in asynchronous it would be invoke. Okay, so that is the only thing. If it is asynchronous, it would be something like this. You won't have this, you wouldn't have this one. I'm just tracking it off. Instead you would have something like this. Okay, so apart from this, like, there won't be any difference. Okay, even if you double click on this, you would have a variable. Okay, so that's the only difference. And if you want to call an external service, also you would use the same this one construct. Okay, so if I want to call a database adapter, just drag and drop an invoke activity, link it to an external service where you will have a database adapter, do it. So we will do all those in the next lesson, but this is basically everything about BPEL. Okay, so any questions till now?
Ravi, I have a question here. So
Yep.
when you're saying that you can use this one to call a asynchronous service, so even the external web server, let's say you call web service, and it take about 1 minute to respond. You can, so as this, so even the web service is not really asynchronous; it's still a synchronous call, but in your BPEL you can after the send, after you invoke it, you can do other stuff, and you can put a receive shape into where you want to receive the call, right?
Correct. I mean, it depends on your requirement. So exactly, I'll model your requirement here. So if your business process is something like this, so wherein you receive something, okay, and then you will do some stuff, and then you would invoke an asynchronous service, which is another BPEL process or whatever it is, okay, and which takes like,
it's a web service. It's just a synchronous web service. Yeah.
Yep. It's asynchronous or synchronous? Asynchronous. Right?
It's just a regular web service. Yeah.
Regular synchronous or asynchronous?
Sync.
Okay. Yeah. A regular sync service. I mean, when you're calling a regular sync service, your process stops at this point. I mean, you should get the response back. Otherwise, it won't go to the next step. Okay. So.
So I cannot just call and say, I don't want to listen to you now. I want Oracle to buffer it up.
Exactly. In that case,
so it doesn't
what
work
you
that
want
way.
to do is this service, I mean, every major service will expose a synchronous port and an asynchronous port. Okay? It is your choice on how to use it. So if your business service says you invoke this service and don't wait for the response, then you would have to use the asynchronous port of it. You just invoke it and then leave it. You go back to your regular stuff and then reply back.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand it here. So usually RESTful is a asynchronous, right? So you call that you get it post back later. For a regular web service, let's say you want to get a weather from a Google service, you just call that service, and that is a synchronous service, right? It's always synchronous.
Correct. You get the response immediately.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I got your point now. So if you call a synchronous web service, Oracle will basically stop the process and wait for the response.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. If you don't want that that to be happening, then you would have to call an asynchronous service. Okay, or the asynchronous port of the same service. So when you want the response,
yeah, just curious how. Let's say a weather service that Google provides that it only has a whistle for the synchronous web service. How can I call a asynchronous web service then?
I mean, okay, you mean if a service doesn't expose a asynchronous port, how do you call it? Is that the
Exactly.
question?
Yeah.
No, you cannot. You cannot. It is the service provider's responsibility to provide. I mean, whatever he provides, you have an option on choosing whatever he provides. Okay. So,
Thank you.
okay. Yep. There is another thing here. Okay. You can actually write a wrapper on top of the existing service to make it asynchronous. Okay. Just like we have seen in Mediator. So maybe you want to write a wrapper code. Okay. Where a simple composite which has one way or an asynchronous or asynchronous port which has a mediator which calls your Google service which is synchronous. Okay, so this synchronous pattern I'm making it asynchronous, and then I can call this asynchronous pattern so that my work is done, my business functionality is done. Okay.
So when you call this this wrapper BPEL service, this wrapper BPEL service will wait, will stop in there because it's calling the web service. But your main BPEL service, that one will continue to run because it's really the parent and it's really not stopping. Is that what you mean?
No, this one I'm modeling it as asynchronous, right? So this service I'm modeling it as asynchronous. That is when you can actually call it and then go with your regular stuff. Okay, so once you receive the response back, it is your duty to call back. Okay, so if you want to hand over the response back, you will have a callback. A callback would be received using a receive activity.
That's a very good example. Thank you.
Yeah, and then you would respond back. Okay. So just like here, so when I'm invoking back, so this is nothing but a callback operation. Okay, so this guy is receiving it. Okay, that's a good question also. Yep. So any more questions? Okay, and the book that I was talking about, like again and again on BPEL, because that is when you feel the real power of BPEL, when you learn the underlying code. Okay, you need not write it with your hand, but it's always good to, because SOA, like, it does 99% of the activities, but there are some things that that the UI doesn't do it. Like, you'll have to go here, and just like in the if condition, if I want to give a condition, like I'm just going to the source and doing it, right? So similarly, there are certain cases in even in BPEL also, but very rare, wherein you want to go here and do it. Or sometimes, JDeveloper works crazy sometimes, wherein it manipulates the namespaces. Okay, when you're in a very big project, namespace becomes a very huge role. It plays a huge role, and that is when you want to check the namespaces. In such cases, source would be your best option. And if you don't know how to read the source, then it will be a very difficult thing for you. So that's my suggestion whenever you have time. For now, like as a beginner, you don't have to go through, but as and when you're doing projects, you concentrate on this and XSLT to have a very good command on SOA. Okay. And that book, unfortunately, is not released for 12C. It is on 11G. Okay, but actually there is no difference, or maybe very little difference between 12C and 11G. Okay, the only difference being 12G offers you many different components or many different activities, whereas 11G offers very few. Apart from that fact, like the code, what is generated, everything remains the same. So that book still holds good. I'll send you the link. I mean, that's not a freely available book, unfortunately, but you can still get it online. You know how it is, or you can buy it from Amazon. Okay, so whatever it is, that's a very nice book to go through. Okay, it might not make sense right now, but after the course, it will definitely. All right, guys. Then